You're listening to the WLW Studios Radio Network, broadcasting live from Center City, Philadelphia, WLW Studio South, Studio B. This is the Midnight Jury.
This is the Midnight Jury, Episode 2, Segment 2. I am Mike Norenganger.
I am Adam Henning, his co-host.
And we are back for our second segment of Episode 2. Now, if you weren't with us for our first segment, shame. But also, our first segment, we just kind of did a horror mashup. I apologized for Halloween 6. A partial apology.
I'll take it.
He loves Halloween 6. We also talked about the Michael Myers mask, so please check that out if you're a Halloween fan. We really pretty much went in depth with that. I inducted Nightmare on Elm Street 2 into the Mike Norenganger gayest horror movie ever made Hall of Fame. There will be future inductees. And of course, Adam here gave us The Innkeepers as his official first inaugural underground horror movie pick of the week, and I haven't seen it either, so just like our listeners, hopefully we can all find a way to see The Innkeepers.
It's available on DVD.
Yep, and next month, hopefully, we will be able to talk about it. I'll be able to give you my rebuttal of what I thought about it. But either way, this is segment 2, and segment 2 is on the selective memory of Vince McMahon and the WWE and what they've been doing to the video library that they've been releasing recently and destroying what we like because we don't watch wrestling anymore, like our friends, of course, the Shining Wizards, although Shining Wizard Eddie has kind of come to our side. It seems recently, and if you haven't heard them, please, if you watch wrestling today, even if you like classic wrestling, shiningwizards.com, their podcasts are awesome. But it's about their history and their video library. Before we get into that, really quickly, I am shaking up my martini. I already that's my just to proof to you. And what blend for this segment, Adam, are you sampling?
I'm sampling some Brindley's mixture. It's a old mixture that is not produced anymore. It's been out of production for at least a decade, maybe 15, 20 years.
But of course, Adam being the connoisseur, I found it.
I stumbled upon it, a very old stock of it at this old convenience store. Very enjoyable. It's a shame that they stopped producing it. And consider myself lucky to enjoy Brindley's mixture on this night, talking about such a enjoyable topic.
I agree. So let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, segment 2 of episode 2, The Midnight Jury. Ladies and gentlemen, sit by your fire, pull out your pipe, shake up your martini, and enjoy our segment 2 on pro wrestling, classic pro wrestling. It basically goes back to that. And it's the selective memory of Vince McMahon in the WWE. So why don't you quickly start us off, and let's start in 2001 with the purchase, and where wrestling basically went downhill.
Yeah. The two main wrestling companies, as you may know from the last time we talked about it, were WWF and WCW. WWF being owned by Vince McMahon, WCW being owned by Time Warner, Ted Turner. By the point in 2001 that Vince McMahon bought WCW, they were doing very poorly, losing millions of dollars every year. Not to say that they weren't worth a lot of money still, but they were losing their parent company, Time Warner, quite a bit of money. And Time Warner wasn't interested in having these money-losing aspects to their organization. So they were very happy to sell off WCW.
And they did.
And they did to Vince McMahon for a very bottom dollar price.
And then right thereafter, this also coincides. ECW went bankrupt pretty much. I believe they were owned by the bank for a while. And then eventually Vince McMahon, because he was thinking of the WWE Network for the future, or the WWE Direct 24/7, he bought up ECW and got the rights to that, and then teased us with one night the rebirth of ECW, which was a joke. It was just basically a rehashing of Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah.
And he got his hands on the entire library to WCW, the entire library to ECW. He got his hands on the AWA, NWA stuff, some of that, WCCW.
So he teased everybody that anybody who is a WCW fan, anybody who is an ECW
Well,
fan,
even WWE fans, because I mean, I watched ECW, but I also watched WWE religiously. And to me, when I looked at it, even when he bought WCW, which I was against, I was excited because all I saw was all these wrestlers coming together and possibly creating what could have happened if, for some reason, Vince McMahon got along with Ted Turner, got along, or Eric Bischoff, or whoever, Vince Russo, got along with Paul Heyman.
Yeah, a super event where they all kind of the feuds kind of were settled between the federations. Every fan's dream was to have the big companies interact with each other. Basically, what happened, to get to the main point, is that he teased us with it. He made us believe that he was going to bring back WCW. They had plans to do so.
Even brought back that secondary logo, that WWE logo.
Yeah, they actually redid the WCW logo, which
we actually, if you watch the YouTube version of our last show, we show it.
Yeah, it was supposed to be their new logo for WCW going forward when they reopened it. And really, they only got so far as having a WCW Monday Nitro segment on Raw, where they had Booker, maybe not a Nitro segment, it was a WCW segment,
yeah,
where they had Booker T fight Buff Bagwell.
Which was like a horrible mistake.
It was their main event of a Monday Night Raw. They figured they'd have the WCW main event, two WCW guys that were going to be a part of the new federation fighting each other as like sort of the first WWE owned.
Did you happen to see, you didn't see what I posted for Booker T getting into the Hall of Fame, right?
No.
Okay, people post things like this all the time, and I saw it and reposted it, so it's not me. But either way, you know when he was talking in WCW, when he was talking to Mean Gene with Harlem Heat.
Yeah, when he calls...
What do you go? Yeah. Okay. Well, there was passed around that since he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he said he's gonna have Stevie Ray come up on stage with him.
Okay.
Like as Harlem Heat.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He's like really proud of that, and like good for him. Harlem
That's
Heat was awesome, actually, and I knew you'd enjoy that because you're a WCW fan.
That could be our first selective memory thing, but they
No, but I'm glad they're letting that go through.
WWE completely ignores Harlem Heat because Harlem Heat was one of the biggest tag teams ever, but never performed in WWE. So of course they're inconsequential as far as Vince McMahon is concerned, and they're treated as such.
Yeah.
They're not. They're 11-time tag team champs.
Well, either way, really quickly, I put it's a picture of that exact moment when he's saying to Hulk Hogan, but it says WWE Hall of Fame, we come for you, nigga. So I don't know. So I just think it's funny that people use that moment. And it's almost accepted that moment. If you're a wrestling fan and you quote that moment, it's okay because Booker T is just out of control at that moment.
Yeah, exactly.
And he really apparently didn't like Hulk Hogan. But either way, yeah. So that was that. I just wanted to point that out, that Booker T is going into the Hall of Fame. That we were talking about Buff Bagwell and him, but that match was a mistake.
Yeah, well, not that.
That was embarrassing, dude. That was embarrassing.
I know the match sucked, but it wasn't a mistake to have it. They were trying.
Yeah.
They were trying
the
to feel
idea.
it out. Yeah.
But they should have. I mean, there should have been. I feel like they're just maybe they came up with that earlier that day.
Yeah, it would.
And then went, hey guys, you guys are in the main event. We're doing a WCW segment, and they were like, shit, it all lies on us. And then of course. No, I'm not taking anything away from Booker T. I love Booker T. I think he's an incredible worker. I actually am not a huge hater on Buff Bagwell. I don't think he's a good worker. I think he's a terrible wrestler, but I like his style. I like his big hats. I think that's a wrestling gimmick. Buff Bagwell,
Yeah, I mean, I put his wrestling ability as.
I mean, in a 1 to 10, I think it's like a 2 or a 3.
I don't think he ever obviously sucked that bad.
He moves like the Warrior.
We're off topic a little bit. I'd put him at average. His wrestling
either
ability
way,
is
yes.
average.
Okay, so the selective memory of Vince McMahon in the WWE. The main thing we're talking about is he got the rights, including the rights to his old stuff, but also the rights to WCW, ECW, and all these NWA promotions throughout the country, to put these out. And now you're seeing DVDs of, like, let's say the American Dream Dusty Rhodes, and when you watch that DVD they'll have like a story, and I'm not just saying Dusty Rhodes in particular, I'm saying with a bunch of wrestlers.
Backstory is just that the important thing to know for everybody is that Vince McMahon has the rights to wrestling footage, any wrestling footage that's ever existed, that's ever mattered. Vince
Yes.
McMahon owns the rights to
Yes.
every single piece of wrestling history
That's not
ever
true that ever
mattered.
mattered. There are indie feds out there that he doesn't own the rights to, and they do have good wrestlers. There are those feds, and it's just there are undiscovered talents out there. But you're right. Pretty much everything that really mattered in the canon of overall wrestling,
Yeah.
Vince McMahon owns. But like what he now like we said, we were excited when he got WCW. We were excited when he got ECW. Well, we're excited that he has all this material. But what does he do? He has to Vince McMahon it up, almost like he did with the XFL. He took something that could have been a good idea because they weren't running against the NFL. Running against the NFL is a mistake. You don't run against the NFL. That's stupid. And it's failed before with other things. But he had to pump so much WWE attitude and WWE actually into it that it failed. Now, what happened with all the footage he had? We got it. We were like, oh, we're gonna see now we can see a Dusty Rhodes video where there's matches from all these different promotions, including WWE, including WCW, including NWA, and it's like we're basically hitting the mother lode. You could do the same thing with Hogan. You could do the same thing with Harley Race. You could do the same thing with like just countless wrestlers that were in all these promotions throughout the best time in history, whether it was the regional promotion history back in the 80s to when Vince McMahon gained control then, or when he gained control in the late 2000 or in the early 2000s from Paul Heyman and Eric Bischoff, Ted Turner, and that group.
Yeah, he basically can make a comprehensive documentary or DVD featuring any match for any wrestler.
Yeah.
So Dusty Rhodes has wrestled in
The
WWF,
Road Warriors, Legion of Doom.
and WCW.
There's an example.
Back in 1999, when there were two separate entities, WCW and WWF, if WWF wanted to make a DVD about Dusty Rhodes, they could only use the few years that he was in the WWF for that DVD.
Yeah.
When he gained the rights to WCW's library and the NWA's library, now he can make a DVD chronicling
with many wrestlers
of his whole career.
Of so many wrestlers who are phenomenal. I mean, even Stone Cold, who had a very limited career in WCW, and his big part of his career was in WWF.
I would argue that a little bit.
I know, but you still do want to see his early career in WCW. You want to see the Hollywood Blondes. You want to see that.
Well, he was television champ in like 91 or 92. And then he was a tag team champ in like 94, 93. And then he was the U.S. champ in 94. So Stone Cold, contrary to popular belief, did not get the shaft in WCW. Eric Bischoff may have shafted him at the very end. I know
he was main event quality and was never given the chance because, of course, of the WCW upper brass.
He was let go right as he was the U.S. champ. He was completely on a linear path to the main event. And then Eric Bischoff did screw him and let him go when he was injured. WWF picked him up and utilized him.
WWE didn't just pick him up. ECW was the first person to pick him up.
Okay, what happened there?
What happened there? That's when he got his chance and got the call from the WWE when they saw what he could do. Because he became Stone Cold in ECW, and WWE saw that and said, whoa, those are the kind of promos he can just shoot? Imagine what we could do with them, not only with our writing, but also his shooting. The marriage of the two made Stone Cold Steve Austin this marketing genius as a character and as a brand.
We're getting off topic, but Stone Cold did not... WWF did not pick up Stone Cold fresh off ECW and then start pumping, WWF machine into him. There was a period when he went to WWF.
No, and he did the Ringmaster.
Yeah, where he was completely...
But he was picked up originally.
And he wasn't doing anything special.
But very few people are just picked up and given the spotlight.
But
you have to have that little bit of period, no matter what fed you go to. You're the rookie. Or at least green or not green. That's a bad word because that's just in wrestling. And
everybody
movie.
knows that Stone Cold's whole moniker was sort of it came into being while he was the ringmaster when he delivered that promo against Jake.
Yes, because of the slogan. Because
ECW.
because Steve Austin is Stone Cold. Steve Austin is that person. So when in ECW, when Paul Heyman said, "You be you," his southern twangs and everything just really showed, and just you saw the redneck come out of him. And that's when Stone Cold, like the guy who will say anything, came out. Austin 316 and the word Stone Cold Steve Austin, like that was a WWE product.
No, I get that.
But I think he was hired because of what they saw the ability in the ring and in promos.
I think not being the huge ECW mark that Mike is, that Stone Cold was just picked
not
up
a mark.
in a completely organic way. Stone Cold, he needed a job. Everybody obviously makes the decision.
But see, you always try to discredit ECW,
because
but I don't discredit.
Like,
I don't discredit WCW.
Yes, you do.
No, I discredit the parts of WCW I don't like.
Was so effing important every single way, and any guy who was ever in ECW, that was the best part of their career, and they never would have achieved what they ever achieved.
You don't give ECW the
unless
credit
they were in ECW.
Because you are drinking the Eric Bischoff Kool-Aid.
No, I am completely not.
You are,
but
ECW had its moments, and the thing is that
I see that,
but you don't give it its due. Whereas I do give WCW its due with certain things it's done. I think it did an amazing job originally with the Flock and with Raven, because he deserves that. He deserves to be given the creativity to do that, and WCW seemed like they were ready to do that with the Flock. When NWO first started and when they kept it small, I think that was a great idea. The NWO was revolutionary. I think that there were other things that ended up maybe doing it a little better or a different way that kept it a little more private. I think the NWO got a little big, but that was the original idea. That was WCW. I give it credit for that. Sting, until he turned to the Crow. Sting is a WCW NWA product. I think the original Sting character was a great idea, although there were a lot at the time like that of like Ultimate Warrior, those like gnarly like surfer dudes with the crazy hair and then the neon face paint. But you don't give ECW jack shit.
I give ECW credit as being completely real about the way they approach storylines, completely real about their characters, letting the wrestlers' personalities come through and sort of changing the tone of wrestling, and I completely appreciate that. But I don't act as though everything that, and I will also acknowledge WCW's mistakes, which were plenty, but I will never accept any ECW marks accusation that ECW made every guy who came through its doors, it made their career, because it effing did not.
Stone Cold, in my opinion, they saw him and went, same with other wrestlers, but they saw him and said, all right, we can bring him in because we know that if we need him to really go and talk, almost like a Jake the Snake. Jake could talk whenever they wanted him to, and they didn't have to fucking write a thing for him. They could just say, Jake, say it, go. And Jake, being the smart man he is, was able to just go. But either way, we're getting so off topic because our time's almost out and we haven't even got to what we're talking about. And what we're talking about is he got all these rights to all these feds, and Vince McMahon, like he did with the XFL and like he did other things, he had to WWE it. So you'll see like a DVD, and like you'll see Taz, and he'll come out in ECW, and it's an old ECW pay-per-view if I have, which I have a bunch on tape and a bunch on actual DVD released by I think Pioneer Entertainment, who did with ECW, and it's Survive If I Let You, his ECW music. But then you get your WWE version, which of course now I'm saying WWE, and all of a sudden it's his
his corny WWF.
Yeah, which no, I don't want to say corny because I did like a lot of WWF's music.
No, me too. That one I'm not a huge fan of.
If someone has a past, you need to let the younger wrestling fans of today, and that's one of our big arguments for this segment. By giving all your money to Vince McMahon right now, by paying to see John Cena and all this G-rated wrestling stuff where fans of today are excited because blood is allowed in a match. What do you mean blood is allowed in a match? You can't hit someone in the head with a steel chair. Now, granted, people sometimes do behind the respect, but do we all remember that it's always been illegal to be hit with a steel chair no matter where you're hit? So even behind someone's back, why are people still? I still watched SmackDown for like a few months. A few months ago, I watched it for a few months, And you could almost see wrestlers turning so that they could get hit directly, squarely in the back the safest way possible. This G-rated crap, the more you pay for this, and I'm talking to real wrestling fans, I'm not talking to kids who love John Cena. I'm talking to real wrestling fans. The more you keep giving him your money and the more he sees sales kind of just plateauing, and they're bad. They're not what they were at the Attitude Era. They're not what they were during the Monday Night Wars. But the more you give your money to him, the more you're going to continue. And they're saying now, there was actually a quote from a WWE executive that compared a WWE crowd to a Disney on Ice crowd.
Really?
That's offensive to me. Like, I've talked to buddies of mine, as a matter of fact, from WLW wrestling. I talked to Corfif, and he's an old school wrestling fan, and he said that he's gone to shows and he's been like, fuck you, John Cena, or you suck, John Cena, and people would look at him like offended at the shows. But what he's saying almost is it wasn't offensive in 1998.
That's what you did when you went to a show.
I mean, seriously, I got into an argument. I'm sorry to bring this up again, and I love the Shining Wizards, but they had some douchebag who clearly was a new wrestling fan and pretended he was an old wrestling fan and tried to compare the heat that Rock or Cena would get at WrestleMania in New York, New Jersey coming up to the heat that Cena got at ECW One Night Stand. Are you kidding me? How dare you? You must never have watched an ECW pay-per-view with a real ECW crowd in your life to think that a G-rated WWE crowd at WrestleMania in 2013 is going to be the same way that a rabid ECW fan base was when we thought that Vince McMahon was bringing back ECW.
There's a guy that I work with that is a younger guy, and he pretends to be like an old school wrestling fan. There's a lot of those guys. But the old school wrestling that they pretend to watch, that they pretend to know about, is that watered down
WWE version
of history.
Yeah, they don't know. It's almost like now I'm learning after this WWE box set came out. I haven't seen it. I haven't bought it.
Which
but
box set? What are we talking about?
There's a new one that just came out of all the WrestleManias, and the Shining Wizards posted it, shiningwizards.com. They posted about it, and I'm almost sure it was Shining Wizards Eddie, who's finally on our side. He said that he pointed out all the things that WWE did. And one of the things was, I think it was WrestleMania 15, when
14.
the Ministry
15,
crucified the Boss Man.
15.
They cut that completely out and they go to like crowd shots like when Owen Hart died.
That's a part of WrestleMania.
That's part of history. And how are we expected to have real intelligent wrestling debates like we have here on the Midnight Jury, like me and him could have, or we could have with the Wizards, or we could have with some of our friends on the side? Like, how are we supposed to have these intelligent debates even if we don't agree? If these people don't know real wrestling history, they know Vince McMahon.
That's one of the pinnacles of the Big Boss Man's career. God rest his soul. He's one of my favorites of all time. And his WrestleMania moment, like the most memorable moment where he's hung, like, which is like, it's a little, people can like it or dislike it, but it's a big moment of his career where like he achieved one of his biggest achievements of wrestling the Undertaker at WrestleMania, part of Undertaker's undefeated streak, and they're pretending that moment didn't happen. And they're taking that from him. And
like all the things you see, like in the DVDs that we've seen, where they take their time out to blur out the WWF scratched out logo. Like, come on! Either pay for the rights or figure out some agreement. You have enough money, but the blurs look worse. Like, it looks terrible.
Everybody knows that at the time you were the WWF. And are you, like, will the World Wildlife Fund, are they able to sue them for not blurring them out?
I mean, I can't get into all that legal stuff. Maybe we'll have a lawyer on one day. But my point being is I'm sure there's something Vince McMahon could pay where they're not still using the name, they're not still using the web domain, they're not using any of that stuff. But in all the past stuff, when they did have the rights to it, they should have the rights to, in their past, be able to show it. It's not like it didn't happen. Now, granted, WWE, I know legally they don't have the right to use it, but I'm sure there's a smaller amount they could pay where they're not paying for the domain name, they're not paying for WWF, where they're just paying for the stuff that while they had it, that they could work out. Like, it's worth it because it looks so stupid with the blurs.
Knowing Vince
McMahon. I actually think I heard that in the WrestleMania DVD there are blurs that aren't there, so that might be a plus.
I think knowing Vince McMahon, though, I would say that he isn't
stubborn.
He isn't blurring it out because of legal reasons. I think he's blurring it out because he doesn't want fans to
remember,
ever
that's true.
confuse
Yeah.
WWE with WWF, and you know how
he doesn't want them to think it was another Fed.
Yeah, exactly.
He wants them to think
he thinks they're stupid, but he also doesn't want there to be any. He has gotten 100% behind the name WWE, and he doesn't want there to be any confusion. He doesn't want fans to sort of yearn for that time period. He wants to make everybody think that it never existed.
And it's all same thing now. Here's another point that we were always going to make. It's with, I've heard that there's a problem with showing Owen Hart, and I don't know the full logistics of it, so I'm not going to get into it. But I'll go right to Chris Benoit. They don't show. They try and pretend like he didn't exist. Now, granted, I'm on the side of he's a scumbag. Now, granted, people are like, "Oh, but he was a great wrestler." Great. Well, you know what? He was a great wrestler who ended up strangling his son. Like, I'm sorry, there's nothing his son could have done. Now, I understand someone going crazy if someone cheated on you and, you know, you go after your husband or you go after your wife or something like that. Not that I understand it, but I'm saying, like, I can see going crazy on another human being of your age or whatever. But to an innocent child, I mean, there's got to be something really, you know, messed up there. But still, he was world heavyweight champion. He was in WCW. He was in WWF. He was in ECW.
Before Chris Benoit did what he did with his wife and son, he was one of the main blows when people look back at the history and the logistics of how WWF wound up beating WCW. One of the main reasons that people say that WCW folded was because in I think it was mid-2000, Chris Benoit, Perry Saturn, Eddie Guerrero, and Dean Malenko were part of four guys that were like the up-and-comers. They were considered the up-and-comers in WCW, the guys that were next for like kind of the main event spots. And they had it up to their necks with WCW's corporate politicking, and they were done with WCW. Actually, Kevin Sullivan, who was booking WCW at the time, actually made a concession to Chris Benoit and said, listen, I know that me and you have heat. Chris Benoit actually stole his wife, Woman, her name was, in storylines. I know me and you have heat. I know you think that I'm probably going to try to keep you down because I know you stole my wife basically. But to prove that I'm going to be fair with you, I'm going to give you the world title. You're going to win the world title. Chris Benoit wouldn't have it. He still didn't believe that WCW was going to give him and the three other guys I mentioned a fair shot. So they asked for their release from the company. And they went to WWF because they thought that there'd be greener pastures, more opportunity. There wouldn't be Hulk Hogan keeping them down, the other old guys. And that's considered one of the main reasons why WCW wound up failing is because that group of four guys...
Because they ended up. Benoit and Guerrero both ended up world champions.
Yes.
I mean, they were, and they... I mean, I don't love them like as a lot of other people do, but I do think they were worthy wrestling-wise, and I think that Guerrero, especially talking and character-wise... were worthy of being a world champion. They deserved their shot.
Yeah, I think people...
They paid their dues, they deserved their shot, and both of them were great in-ring performers.
I think like Mike said, people overemphasize Eddie Guerrero and what were they called? The Radicals?
The Radicals.
I think they overemphasize the Radicals... what they represented during that time in terms of because they left, WCW went under. I don't believe that one bit. But before my point is that before Chris Benoit did what he did to his family, WWF 100% acted as though Chris Benoit leaving WCW was one of the main reasons that they wound up failing. And once he did what he did with his family, that no longer happened. I was just talking about with Mike how one of the main things when I was starting to get into wrestling and buying all the old Coliseum videotapes and all the Turner Home Video WCW tapes. One of the main things that I liked looking back on was the entrance musics that these guys came out to, and it helped to understand their character at the time, and like getting to know all the old wrestling themes they came out to, how many they had. And if you watch an old video, say from 1992, like in this case with Taz, and you want to see what he was coming out to at the time and what his character was like, and then you hear... the
same theme that you hear on TV?
Yeah, the theme from like 2005. That would piss me off to no end. And the thing is, I think new wrestling fans, they don't know the wiser. I don't think they know.
And also I've heard that in subsequent showings of WrestleMania 18, when Hogan fought The Rock,
they
have edited and dulled down the booing and the heat that The Rock got.
Yeah, because...
By the way, if that Tool on the Shining Wizards would have compared the heat Rock or Cena would get to maybe that heat, I would have maybe laid off. But that was pretty big heat, so even that's pushing it. But I would have maybe laid off.
Yeah, it's unbelievable how Vince McMahon will go back and rewrite history.
He'll edit out boos, he'll change things around, he'll add chants, he'll change people's music from the time, and it's insulting to all of us wrestling fans, and we really have to stop giving him your money. If you want to watch something free, if you get cable and you get Raw and you get SmackDown and you want to watch them, fine. But don't be paying for his events. Don't be ordering his pay-per-views. You can read it online. You can, watch it somewhere else online. Stop giving him your money. Stop paying for this.
The bottom line is that...
He's spitting in your face. He's spitting in the history of what you grew up with.
The bottom line is that newer wrestling fans, the guy that I work with, who actually just spent $350 for a mediocre seat at WrestleMania... And
Get out of here.
He's a poser, and he tries to act like he knows all about the Attitude Era, it's just stupid.
No, and that's another thing. Nobody will ever know anything about the Attitude Era unless you have tapes or you have stuff from that time, because it was nothing that they could show nowadays. I don't even think there's promos they could show. I don't think there's backstage vignettes or whatever you want to call them that they could show. Promos, nothing.
Yeah.
Because it was vulgar, it was, whatever, but it was funny. And it was good, it was serious, it was intense.
My sort of closing statements on the topic.
Pointing out that I've also lived through many eras. I've been watching wrestling since I can remember. I was telling Adam this. I'm 31 years old. I can't remember. One of the first things I can remember watching. So I was probably 3 or 4 years old when I started watching WWF and a little bit of NWA that I was able to get.
Yeah, well, on piggybacking off that is that I started watching wrestling when I was about 13.
Northeast, buddy, in the 80s. We had the WWF.
Yeah, very, well, I'm a little bit different, but very religiously I started watching wrestling at about 13. It was 1998. I had watched wrestling for a period in 1990. But it didn't last. It was about a year, and I was a big wrestling fan. But then it stopped up until 1998, and I got back into it big time with WCW, but I was also watching WWF and some ECW. But the way that I became a hardcore wrestling fan and sort of like a wrestling historian is tracking down old tapes.
Yep.
Any old tape I can find. I have a vast...
Trading with people.
Coliseum home video library, and like like some of my videos are selling on eBay for like $300 because they're so rare. And the bottom line is that that's how I learned wrestling and what like the true nature of wrestling. But if fans nowadays are only relying on Vince McMahon's watered down version of wrestling history, we're kind of screwed going forward. We're not going to have any people after our generation knowing what wrestling even is. They're
not going to know the right history.
There's going to be no hope for future wrestling if they don't know what the old wrestling was. So what fans that know better, such as us, Shining Wizards, whoever...
There's a lot of us out there.
We need to stop supporting...
Just those of you hanging on. Just I don't care if you still want to watch, but don't give him more of your money. Drop it off. Get rid of that money. Or pay for TNA pay-per-views. Do whatever you have to do. Pay for indie shows. There's so many out there. Vince McMahon thinks he could just do whatever he wants. He's spitting in your faces.
We need to demand better.
Yeah, me and Adam gave up a few years ago. There was a time, like I said, that I started watching SmackDown because it was free and whatever. But I wasn't paying for no pay-per-view. I'm not buying their products anymore. I'm done. And that's the point of this segment, which, by the way, is coming to a close. But that's our point. He's changing the history of our beloved 80s, 90s wrestling. We need to forget that. That's not fair.
And I think the only thing that we can do is demand pure tapes from that era, pure videos, pure documentaries, stuff that actually reflects what happened.
Don't buy something. Don't ever buy a WWE released ECW pay-per-view or something. Go onto eBay if you're looking for ECW, if you're looking for NWA, if you're looking for old school WWF, even 90s era. go onto eBay and find somebody who has it originally. It may be not the best quality. It may have commercials, whatever. But at least you're getting real wrestling. And that's to any of you new fans.
And you could actually find the original release of it in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
The actual Coliseum home video. I know you'd have to convert it to DVD, but it's kind of cool.
No, but there's even DVDs of certain eras that DVDs were out. And
Yeah,
you can
true.
You can still find some of like the ECWs and some other things.
From Pioneer.
Even old WWF on DVDs.
Yeah.
Just don't get anything they re-release. Forget it. If it's a story about someone, okay, I understand. But, events and stuff, like, forget about it.
We need to demand better. Every dollar you spend with Vince McMahon is a vote of confidence, and he needs to understand that we are not giving him any more votes.
We are hoping you'll join us. I'm sorry, this is the end, Adam, of this segment. We have another segment coming up. But ladies and gentlemen, we are the Midnight Jury, and if you love us, if you love our segments, go like us on Facebook. It's facebook.com/WLW Studios. If you have anything to say about this topic, write us at WLW Studios NJ, which is New Jersey, at gmail.com.
Leave comments, personal messages, whatever.
Anything. We want to hear from you. We are probably listening or watching on YouTube. Our next segment, we're coming back. It's going to be on the Child's Play series. We are done with this one. This is the Midnight Jury. I am Mike Norenganger.
Order in the court. Order in the court. The jury is in.
Yeah, the jury's in.
Is
Vince
in.
McMahon, stop screwing everything up.
You're going to get it, Vince. You're going to get it.
This is, once again, this is Mike Norenganger.
And Adam Henning.
And this is the Midnight Jury. We'll be back for segment 3.